Thanks so much for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Ephraim Graham.
And I'm Charlene Aaron. The case of a Christian mother sentenced to death for apostasy continues to get international attention. Days after Miriam Ibrahim was released from a Sudanese prison, she and her family are still stuck in the African country, trying desperately to come to the United States. George Thomas has more on why it's taking so long.
11 days after being freed from prison, why is Miriam Ibrahim, her husband and 2 children still stuck in a corner of the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum, Sudan? Tina Ramirez is with Hardwired, a group that has legal contacts with Ibrahim's case.
I think it's a good question that everybody's asking. The charges were dismissed. She was at the airport. She should have just been able to go.
On June 30th, the Christian mother was released after spending 8 months in a women's prison in Khartoum. She was sentenced to death and 100 lashes for marrying a Christian man. The court wanted her to convert to Islam. A day after her release, she and her family tried to leave for the United States, but were arrested at the airport, accused of using false papers to make the trip.
And so she was traveling outside the country on those documents, and the Sudanese government didn't recognize them. So they've charged her with falsifying documents.
The U.S. State Department says it's working to get her and her family out of the country.
We are engaging directly with Sudanese officials to secure their safe and swift departure from Sudan.
But in an earlier interview with CBN News, Ramirez said the State Department should have done more a lot sooner with this case.
Daniel had been petitioning for his wife to come here for the past 3 years since they were married, and a typical visa for a spouse will take about 6 to 9 months. So for this to have gone on for 3 years to the point where then her family was able to bring a case against her that put her in prison, it shows an extreme amount of negligence on the part of the American embassy in Khartoum.
During her imprisonment, the 27-year-old mother gave birth to a daughter while her legs were shackled.
Her doctors had advised the prison officials to let her go and deliver at the hospital, and they didn't allow her to. So she actually was chained in both legs and was not able to give birth in the normal manner.
For Ramirez and other human rights activists, this isn't just about rescuing Ibrahim. It's also about drawing attention to Sudan's harsh apostasy law.
There are other Christians that are being prosecuted under the apostasy law, which says that if you're a Muslim and you leave your faith, you become a Christian, then you can be put to death. And we want to change that law.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson says the agency responsible for removing illegal immigrants could run out of money by mid-August. He's pushing Congress to approve President Obama's emergency funding request for nearly $4 billion to help deal with the flood of unaccompanied minors crossing the border illegally. Roughly half of the money would be used to care for the minors. Most of the remaining money would go to beef up border security.
I personally have no confidence that pouring billions of dollars into our current immigration system will solve the crisis. I think we have to get serious about enforcing our current laws and protecting our border if we're ever to get different results.
Republicans are demanding a quicker deportation process for those children.
A federal judge is demanding the Internal Revenue Service detail how former IRS official Lois Lerner's emails went missing. U.S. District Judge Emmett G. Sullivan wants an explanation in writing. Sullivan issued the order as part of a lawsuit filed by the conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch. Lerner is a key part of the investigation into the tax agency's targeting of Tea Party and other conservative groups. The IRS has until August 10th to detail how the emails went missing, as well as methods for recovering them. The U.S. House of Representatives is moving ahead with its plans to sue the president over the implementation of Obamacare. Speaker John Boehner announced the lawsuit weeks ago, and House Republicans took the initial step on the issue Thursday. His office released a draft of the resolution that would authorize the House to file the suit. It seeks legal action to challenge the White House's decision to delay the health care law's employer mandate until 2016. Republican lawmakers have long complained that Obama overstepped his authority by delaying portions of Obamacare, especially the employer mandate.
President Obama called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and offered to broker a ceasefire, but so far Israel shows no signs of ending its Operation Protective Edge. As Chris Mitchell reports from Tel Aviv, Israel's campaign is not only aimed at stopping Hamas rockets, but also may be sending a message to another Mideast country.
Israel entered the fourth day of its Operation Protective Edge, by striking more Hamas targets within Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned the operation to rid Hamas of its ability to fire rockets may take a long time. But some analysts believe Israel's military campaign also sends a signal to Iran. While Western leaders might be willing to tolerate a nuclear Iran, Israel knows Iran with nuclear weapons poses an existential threat to the Jewish state. The IDF's massive air campaign may be showing Iran it's capable of mounting the kind of large-scale air campaign necessary to destroy Iran's nuclear infrastructure. But for now, Israelis have been running to bomb shelters throughout Israel, including Jerusalem.
Luckily, the IDF's Iron Dome intercepted the rockets en route and took out the threat.
This Iron Dome anti-missile battery just outside of Ashkelon and others throughout the country are Israel's first line of defense. Without the success of this joint U.S.-Israel project, it's likely dozens of rockets would have been falling on Israel's cities and towns. It makes Israelis feel safe.
It's really changed the feeling of the citizen in Israel.
But inside Gaza, Hamas seems to be putting their own citizens into harm's way. They instructed their people to ignore IDF phone calls. The phone calls are Israel's way to protect the people of Gaza so they can get out of harm's way before a building is about to be targeted. Israel calls it the knock on the door. Ron Prosser, Israeli ambassador to the UN, explained the difference between Israeli actions and Hamas's tactics.
Israel is using precision strikes to avoid harming civilians, but Hamas is exploiting our concern for human life by hiding in Palestinian homes, schools and mosques, and using a Palestinian hospital as the headquarters.
Hamas also calls on Palestinians to gather on top of buildings about to be targeted so Israel won't hit that target. This IDF video shows they didn't hit the building because of the people. So far, Hamas has fired nearly 600 rockets into Israel, and now millions more Israelis are in range than ever before. One way Israelis have begun dealing with the situation is by installing a free app on their smartphones called Red Alert. It tells in real time where a rocket is heading so they can get out of harm's way. And Christians around the world have begun using it, so when they hear sounds like this, or like this, they can pray for protection for those in harm's way and pray for the overall situation. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Tel Aviv.
Moms hot to stop global warming brought their kids to Capitol Hill this week. They're asking lawmakers to pass whatever measures are needed to fight climate change. But as Paul Strand reports, not everyone agrees with them that drastic action will help or is even for the best.
These moms and their kids held a play-in on Capitol Hill to protest government inaction against climate change. It was a play-in instead of sit-in because most kids won't sit still for a sit-in. Their mothers worry about a future world where global warming floods the coast, makes for ever worse superstorms, and kills crops with massive droughts.
I'm worried that it's not going to be sustainable for human life.
Our pantry prices are rising because of extreme droughts. I live on the eastern seaboard. My kids have seen more severe storms in their short lifetimes than I ever saw when I was a kid growing up.
These moms and their supporters say they believe climate change is going to harm the future world of their children, but also it's hurting the country right now.
Well, we live in California. Drought is a major issue right now. I mean, it's just devastating the agricultural base.
The extreme weather events are hurting our families, and the increased heat are hurting our kids. My 3-year-old suffers from asthma, and I know that she is being affected by longer allergy seasons and higher heat in the summer.
But William Yateman at the Competitive Enterprise Institute argues not everyone agrees climate change will lead to these horrific results.
A lot of what you'll hear, and certainly today, were along the alarmist lines. But is there a consensus as to whether or not global warming is the end-all threat facing mankind? There is no such consensus.
But Linda Hutchins-Knowles is a Quaker who believes it's a godly duty to fight climate change.
I believe that God has gifted us to be stewards of the planet, and it's our responsibility, a sacred duty, to protect what God's created.
Democrat Senator Barbara Boxer said she came to the play-in as a lawmaker, but also concerned grandmother and mom.
So if we ignore pollution from carbon, we are walking right into a death trap.
But Yeatman says some government leaders admit the U.S. alone can't seriously impact the climate. And if the whole world does all the UN wants, the results are still uncertain, and the cost would be an economy-crippling $45 trillion.
Which is a lot of money, a lot of economic growth, and indeed would cause a lot of human misery were such policies to that end to be implemented. We're talking about huge costs for absolutely zero benefit.
The debate over climate change goes on, but these moms say their minds are made up. Climate change is a reality, and it's going to become much worse in the future. And they say the country has to do something about it now. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Capitol Hill.
Coming up, we'll take you to the bomb shelter capital of the world, a place here in Israel that's been nicknamed Rocket Town. For the past 2 weeks, hundreds of rockets have been launched from Gaza into southern Israel. It is the latest escalation in attacks that have been going on since 2001.
That's right. And 2 years ago, Scott Ross visited the town of Sderot, just a half mile from the Gaza border. There, he got a look at what daily life is like under the constant threat of rocket attack.
They call it Rocket Town, the bomb shelter capital of the world. For more than a decade, Israelis in Sderot and southern Israel have lived under almost daily rocket attacks from the Gaza Strip.
Is this representative of what you're dealing with here all the time?
The truth is, this is a very small fraction of the rockets themselves that exploded here in the region itself.
You have people getting killed here in your town?
We had over 44 people being killed overall by rocket fire, over 1,200 been seriously injured. At the same time, you have an entire generation that grew up with this kind of reality of sirens going off.
David Buskila was born and raised in Sderot and has been the city's mayor for 14 years.
You love this town, you love the people?
Of course.
Yes.
Someone that not love this town cannot live here.
Day by day, you have to deal with this lifestyle where rockets are being showered literally upon you. How does one adjust to that, if you ever do, really?
In April 2001, it was the first missile that launched to this city. Since then, we had more than 8,000 missiles.
8,000?
8,000 missiles that land only in Sderot. It's a little town, 5.5 square kilometers. 25,000 people live here. And you can imagine that 8,000 hit almost every apartment, every house in this city.
Buskila says many Israelis here suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. The mayor took me to a hill on the edge of town where we could see just how close the Gaza Strip is.
This is the border. It's 840 meters. It's the meaning is something like half a mile.
They could fire rockets at these towers and knock them down, and
they launch rockets to the electric power station.
Yes, you supply Gaza.
We gave them electric, and they launch rockets to broke the electric power station, and then to complain that they have darkness in Gaza. You see, this is not normal.
Everyone who drives in Sderot turns off the radio and rolls the windows down, ready to hear the color red siren to make a mad dash for safety.
And here I am in a playground where kids come and play. Here's a caterpillar, and anywhere else in the world, this would be a normal caterpillar. However, this is a bit different. This is, in fact, a bomb shelter. So when kids come out here to play, a siren goes off. They have 15 seconds to get inside here to be protected from falling bombs. How does this environment affect children as they're growing up?
Only yesterday I was talking to one of my friends that her a boy is in our kindergarten too. We had 2 alarms yesterday or the day before, I don't remember. And he was so panicked that she had to get out of work and come and get him. And he is only 2 years old.
Hagar Aloni is Sderot's social worker.
We have to be aware of where a bomb shelter is, right?
Right there, yeah.
Okay, tell me where to run in case something lands here.
Nothing moved me more than meeting Geut Aragon. In January 2008, she was sitting in her home with her 4-year-old son Nir and a neighbor child on her lap. A rocket crashed through the room where they were sitting.
The bomb come through the wall into the room.
all the roof was crushed on us from the, how you say it?
Explosion.
The explosion. The girl was, fly to the corner. There was 4 shrapnels in my head.
Yeah.
And they operated and they took out 3 of them, but one of them, it get deep into the brain, so they don't want to touch it.
Gayout was in rehab for a year and a half, but that wasn't the end of her trouble. Nearly 5 years later, her son is still afraid to sleep in his room. The family has to run to the bomb shelter sometimes 3 times a night. So why does she stay?
It's my country, it's my city. I'm born here.
Right.
I love it. If you want to move, you need to sell the house. No one wants to buy a house in Sderot. No one wants to come from outside to live under bombing,
Mm-hmm.
But I have to tell you, even that, we very love this city.
How does it affect you now when you hear the rockets landing? Because they're still shooting them here.
Every time I heard the siren, it takes me back then.
Yeah.
And when I go down to the shelter, I'm sitting and I start crying every time and again.
Do you believe that God protected you?
Yeah.
You do believe that?
I believe that, yeah.
You're not angry?
Totally.
You're not angry with God because He allowed it to happen?
No. I think now, and I thought back then that it was a miracle, and He protects on me, and He leaves me here in this world living for my boys, because, and I thank Him every morning. I never was that believer, No. But since day, I believe more in God.
Scott Ross, CBN, Sderot, Israel.
Up next, from the latest Planet of the Apes to a movie about legendary Christian singer Rich Mullins. We've got your weekend movie reviews just ahead. The weekend is here, and that means it is time for our family-friendly movie reviews. And joining us now with more is Bob Waliszewski, director of Focus on the Family's Entertainment Review Department, plugged in online. Bob, slim pickings at the box office, but the big blockbuster, of course, is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. How does it rank for families?
Well, it's rated PG-13, and essentially it's been 10 years since a virus decimated humanity, except for a few folks that are genetically predisposed to handle a virus like that. No one knows for sure exactly how many humans. This area focuses on San Francisco. We see the city's been decimated. But meanwhile, the apes are doing very well. Remember, these are enlightened apes. And a trigger-happy human ends up shooting one of the apes, which triggers a war between mankind and the apes. Essentially, you have villains and heroes, both on the human and the simian side. You have heroics. You also have some violence that it can be a little bit edgy. It gets a 3 out of 5 for family friendliness, which is right on the bubble, of course.
All right. Well, this week did bring a DVD release worth checking out. Tell us about Ragamuffin.
Ragamuffin is what I call the life and complicated times of singer-songwriter Rich Mullins. We are introduced to him as a boy. We find out he has quite a few daddy issues. He's just not measuring up to what his father expected on the family farm. Rich, for instance, puts diesel in or gasoline in a diesel tractor, and his dad, of course, comes unglued. When his dad is introducing his family, he has 3 boys and 2 girls, but he often says he has 2 girls, 2 boys, and a piano player. Ouch. So it's no wonder that as Rich goes off to college, begins singing Christian music and writing Christian songs, that he has some struggles. He smokes, he swears, but you can tell that he really loves the Lord. He's just fighting, trying to live up to what he knows he should be doing. One minute he's helping Native Americans on a reservation. In the next moment, he's breaking a phone booth glass because he just flies off the handle. Or he's hungover and he tells a mentor that a mentor asks, "How hungover are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And Rich goes, "An 11. So it's that issue. Now, here's what I think. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. For some, they're going to see this film and say, wow, I can identify with some of that. I'm a little bit duplicitous myself, a little two-faced. I'm walking the fence on both sides, and I need to clean it up. I don't like it in Rich Mullen's life. I don't want it in my life. But I think it'll go the other way. For some, though, they might find a sense of comfort in their own duplicity. So depending on one's faith journey is whether one should see this film.
All right, Bob, with that, we're plugged in. See you next time.
You bet.
Well, this Sunday, soccer fans around the world will be glued to their TVs. Germany and Argentina are battling in the finals of the World Cup.
Throughout this tournament, Christians have used the event as an opportunity to spread a message of God's love, including one U.S. women's soccer team that came to the town of Natal to put on a show of their own.
The Lady Bison team from Oklahoma Baptist University arrived in Natal for a series of friendly matches with local Brazilian teams. They also held training camps for younger players. They came with a unique tool for sharing God's love, a brightly colored soccer ball.
It's kind of like the bracelets, and with all the different colors, how the black represents the sin, and how the red, it represents the blood of Jesus Christ when he came and died for us. And we explain to them that he's the Son of God, and that we believe in our hearts that he is the Savior.
During their brief stay in northern Brazil, the team reported that 18 people accepted Christ, and 22 others showed an interest in hosting home Bible studies. Thousands of Baptist churches participated in outreach events during the Cup. They even used a small drone, wireless hotspots, and free microchips for cell phones to share Christian videos and messages with those attending the games. Heather Sell, CBN News.
It's awesome. I'm not a gambling person, but my money's on Germany.
Okay, then I'll have to take Argentina.
We'll see. Right. Well, that's it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
Be sure to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Make it a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend.